Today, I'm excited to introduce you guys to Danielle Liss. She's a partner and founder of Business Ease. She's also the owner of #Legal, a law firm focusing on social media law with an emphasis on legal issues related to bloggers and influencer marketing. I love Danielle's story of falling out of love with the practice of law and then following life's breadcrumbs to fall back in love with the law and build 2 successful legal businesses as a result. So let's get to the show. Welcome, Danielle. I'm so excited to have you on the Happy Lawyer Project today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I love what you've done with this podcast. You're putting great information out there for everyone in our field.
I mean, this interview has been a long time coming, and I'm really thrilled to finally get to connect, but also really excited because I feel like our relationship, we met at FinCon a couple months ago, and I feel like through trying to schedule this, have gotten to stay in touch. So I'm excited about that because I kind of feel like if we had done it right away, I might have never heard from you again.
Right.
But I would love if you could start by just giving the listeners a brief description of your journey in the law and kind of letting us know where you are now and how you fell out of and fell back in love with the law.
Absolutely. Once upon a time, I made a very practical decision to major in art history as an undergrad. And I loved art history. I loved everything about it. But the problem came when I realized I did not want to be a professor and I did not want to work in a museum. So
what did you think you were going to do with your...
Well, I really thought that I was going to go on to museum work. And then I did internships and I said, I do not like this. And it was one of those moments where it's like, well, this is a problem, isn't it? So I ended up working in banking for a little while. I'm from the East Coast and I lived in Delaware and banking was everywhere in Delaware. So I worked for a credit card company that's no longer there called MBNA. And I was working in internet marketing at its very beginning. Online banking was still a very new thing. So I was involved there and wasn't particularly happy, but didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I went to law school because that's a logical conclusion. When you're not sure what you want to do, you just pick law school. And so I went to law school in Delaware. And when I graduated, I moved to Las Vegas. When I was here, I entered in my private practice was primarily litigation. And there was a lot of business lit and a lot of construction law. It was not a field that was probably best for who I am and the way that I think. I do not have that sort of mathematical engineering mindset that I think makes so many construction lawyers great at what they do. And I worked with some folks who are they're incredible. The things that they understand, and they would try to explain to me. And after enough explanation, I would sort of feel like I understood it, but that simple ease in understanding was never there. And I also didn't like the contentiousness of litigation. It just made me feel very edgy and anxious. So add those 2 things together and it wasn't the right place for me. And I always sort of knew I never envisioned myself becoming a partner at one of these firms because it never felt right. I never felt like it was the right place. I was doing a fine job and I was always good at drafting the briefs and things like that. But the rest of it just wasn't there. Now, at the same time, I had started blogging in law school. So in 2004, which basically makes me a dinosaur in the blogging world. And I always liked to write. That was one of my ways of just kind of venting to the world and, throwing out my focus on things. And I think it was 2010, a friend came to me. This was when influencer marketing was in its very early stages. And she said, I have this great opportunity for a campaign. They sent me a contract. Can you review it? I said, sure. Send it over. So I reviewed it and I was like, can you not sign this? Because this has a lot of stuff that you probably don't even realize is in there. And just through a casual conversation, she said, I don't think that a lot of bloggers know about this. You should try to teach them. And I said, okay. So I started speaking and a speaking career was born. I spoke at a couple dozen conferences to bloggers on blog law, just really how to read a contract, how to understand what you're doing when you're getting into these influencer networking or influencer marketing campaigns. And the problem was that I had that on one side, which I really liked, but then my practice that I was doing every day was litigation and construction. And I couldn't find a way to make those 2 meet somewhere. So A friend of mine founded a company called Fitfluential, which was an influencer marketing network.
Just really quick before you go on, could you explain what influencer marketing is for people who have no idea?
Absolutely. You're right, because I'm talking more to folks in the legal industry right now. So influencer marketing is, if you think about people who have a blog or are big on Instagram, big on Twitter or Facebook, and they have a really large audience, what influencer marketing does is connects brands with those influencers to promote products or messaging. So essentially, think of those influencers like a spokesperson for a particular brand. So what I was talking to people about is if you're going to enter into those contracts with the brands or with an agency who's representing a brand, these are the kind of things that you need to look for when you are entering those contracts. So that became a really big passion area for me. So when my friend founded Fitfluential, she said, "Do you want to be involved?" And I said, yes. Like I knew that that was the right step for me. So eventually my role evolved into I became the chief marketing officer and general counsel. The legal work that I was doing was relatively minimal. It was primarily contract drafting for the influencers that we worked with and reviewing the contracts that went back and forth between us and brands. So in that job, we would have a company who came to us and said, "I want to work with a certain number of influencers on a campaign to help promote my health and wellness product." My job would be to get the contracts in order, but then to administer that campaign. So from the time the sales team finished with it, I worked on the campaigns. I would help select the influencers. I would work on the talking points and really from start to finish administering those campaigns. So my job was a lot less legal at that point and a whole lot more running the campaigns and working in the administration of the company itself, not really the legal side.
Can I ask, first of all, how did you get this position and how did you feel comfortable going after something that was kind of outside what you were doing at the time?
Absolutely. I met my former business partner on Twitter. We met, right? It's one of those kind of conversations. We met before a Blog Her conference, and I want to say it was 2010 or 2011. And we connected, and she, at that time, had this idea sort of percolating, saying, "I know I want to do this, but I don't know when the time is going to be right." So within the next year, she knew that she was going to start the company, and I got involved with it. And she had said, "I definitely want you on board." I was originally on the board of advisors for legal aspects, and then my role sort of evolved. And I said, "You know what? I know the blogging world. I know the influencer space, and I want to take this chance," because it was my way that I could potentially get out of litigation. And I said, "You know what? I do know enough," because I had worked in marketing when I was at the credit card company. So it wasn't that foreign an idea to me. That kind of allowed me to mix both my past work with the credit card company and then my current work with legal and my knowledge of the blogging world. So it was kind of like everything I knew sort of coming into one position.
And did the firm know that you were doing this?
They knew I was doing it on the side. I wasn't sure how quickly it would grow and if it would be able to sustain what I needed as a full-time income. And so they knew I was doing it. They knew that I was speaking, that I was going to conferences, and they were very supportive of that because I had wanted to find a way to maybe try to build a blog law practice within the firm that I was working for, but could really just never figure out how to do it. And so they had an idea. I just don't think that I honestly didn't know. So it's not like they were aware either that it would grow quite as fast as it did. And then I'd be able to leave and make that my full-time job.
How fast did it happen?
Probably about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it was a little longer than that, but we were able to work with one really big client who kind of set things in motion for us to be able to come on full-time and to really concentrate on doing it.
That's amazing. And
yeah,
it was 2011?
Yeah. So I left my job in litigation in February of 2012. And I stayed at Fitfluential through the end of last year. And I loved the job. I loved everything that I learned there, but it was extremely hectic and crazy. And it was 24/7. It was, I can tell you, I would be on holidays. I would be Thanksgiving responding to emails from people on campaigns and clients. And it was just crazy. Then I had my son in 2013. And when I had him, I really wanted less of the 24/7 feeling like I was on call so that I could spend time with my little guy while he was still little. I wanted to be able to enjoy that more. And my maternity leave, because I was needed back on things, ended up being about 2 weeks before I came back, about 3/4 time. And so it was one of those, it was a really, and it was one of those things where we were launching a big campaign. We had a very small team and I was needed back. And I said, you know what, I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. And what I realized is, okay, I don't know how well this is going to work long term, because I was working pretty much, if I did not have my son in my hands, I felt like I was working all the time, or I was trying to figure out when I could work. And for the first 6 months, because I tried to not put him into daycare, I would get up. I can't even tell you when I would get up, probably like 4:30, so that I could I would try to do conference calls before my husband left for work. And then I was trying to work a shift in the morning, then whenever he would nap, and then when he would go to bed, I was exhausted. It wasn't working. So as soon as he became mobile, that's when kind of my world of having him home, it was just like, this isn't going to work, because he's an active kid, and he was just into everything. And he was an early crawler, an early walker, an early climber. And so it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I got to make a decision. So he went into a little preschool that we love, and around 18 months, he switched to a Montessori school, which we also love.
I forgot that you were also a Montessori mom.
Yeah,
I knew that.
I love my Montessori school so much. But that was when I kind of started to think, okay, I need to make some changes so that I need more balance. And I don't believe that balance is a thing. I think that everything in life is about the choices that we make and what is priority at a given time. But I also knew that I was kind of losing myself in the process. There was just no time for self-care, because I was either working or taking care of an infant or a toddler, depending on what year it was. And so I knew that I needed to find a different way to do things. So it was January of 2015. I went to a conference. I had taken a couple years off from speaking because I had gotten pregnant and then had my son. So I was doing a roundtable at a conference that was here in Vegas. And it was me and one other lawyer who were leading the roundtable on legal topics for bloggers. All the other tables surrounding us were what we always call the sexy topics for bloggers. It was like how to grow your Instagram followers, how to create Pinterest recipes, how to do things like, how to drive traffic.
Yep.
So we were really by ourselves. No one wanted to talk about the legal issues because people didn't want to deal with that side of their business. So we got to talking. And we always joke now that was our first meeting, and we basically got Quickie Vegas married at that conference, because we realized we had both been sitting on a very similar idea, but hadn't had the ability to execute it. And that was, a lot of bloggers are making money, but they're not quite making enough to retain a lawyer, or they don't want to deal with the kind of fees that come along with hiring an attorney. And if you're making $500 on a sponsored post campaign, you may not want to spend $300 an hour for a lawyer to review your contract. So we had both been sitting on this idea of starting DIY legal templates that were aimed more toward bloggers. Because if they go to something like LegalZoom, they would just look at it and say, I don't know which of these forms I need. And also, I don't think that this fits. So they would still need help kind of customizing what they needed. So we said, you know what, let's talk about this. And I remember coming home from that conference and saying to my husband, I met somebody at this conference, and this feels like one of those like life-changing moments. And he's just like, okay, what happened? So I told him, and I was like, this feels right. I have to explore this. And he's just like, you still have zero time. You know that. And I'm like, I know, but I have to figure this out. I have to think about whether or not this can go anywhere. So this is my now business partner, Jamie, and we decided to try.
Did Jamie mention to you that me and her are in the same incubator program for next year?
She did. So, and now you get the whole backstory. So we decided to build a business called Business Ease, which was going to be DIY legal forms for bloggers. And we started working on that. And at the same time, my job was becoming more and more hectic. And I said, I have to make a decision. Do I think that this new business is going to be viable And can I put myself into this 100%? Am I willing to take this leap? And I decided, yeah, I am. So I gave notice at Fitfluential in late May of 2015 to start pursuing it. Now, because of the role that I was in, I was one of the owners of the company. It was a very long departure plan. So I didn't leave until December. So we had about 6 months to work through everything, to train people, to find people, the whole thing. So within that time frame, Jamie and I were kind of working behind the scenes to get everything ready for Business Ease. We also realized that people probably needed a law firm to go along with it. And I'm going to tell you completely honestly, I always thought that I would be happy if the law firm made enough to kind of pay for my expenses. So my malpractice insurance, my bar fees, my CLEs, those basic things. I did not think that it was going to be the primary driver of my income. I was really wrong. When January came, we launched Business Ease and also launched the law firm. The law firm is called #Legal.
Which is by far the best name of any law firm ever.
Thank you.
I told my husband when I came back from FinCon, I was like, oh my gosh, she's a genius. He was like, how has no one thought of that before? I was like, because we're lawyers. It's not, we're not punny.
There was an Australian blog by the same name, but it wasn't actually a law firm. So when I was considering names, I was like, oh, I could do Liss Legal, boring, something along those lines. And I was like, I want something. And I was joking with a Facebook group that I'm in. And I said, wouldn't it be funny if I did like literally the hashtag, not the word spelled out, legal. And they were like, that's awesome. And I was like, is this taken? And so it kind of went from there. But so in January, we launched Business Ease and it did okay. We had some sales coming in, but it certainly wasn't going to be a full-time income for one person, let alone two. But the thing that happened was #Legal really started picking up. And Jamie and I were both doing separate firms at the time. I was #Legal. She had her own firm. And by April, we realized we have a lot of business coming in and this is going to be so much more profitable if we can just join forces. So we did, and we both came under the umbrella of #Legal, and we've been working at that. And it's amazing how quickly it has grown within, a really short period of time.
So what was leading to that growth? Were you marketing? Was it just word of mouth? I mean, obviously the name alone is going to resonate with your audience. Because I feel like legal is so intimidating for people in that space that to see someone who they know immediately speaks their language.
It was primarily word of mouth. A lot of people, Jamie's old job was director of operations for a very popular conference called Type A Parent. And that is aimed primarily at parenting bloggers. So she was very well known in that space. I had been very well known within Fitfluential and within the blogging space. And so people were coming to us saying, are you doing this now? Fantastic, here. And then we started getting lots of referrals based on that. So we were dealing with a lot of networks, influencer networks coming to us saying, we need a lawyer who knows what we do. Because the biggest complaint that we got was that they had their existing lawyers, but those lawyers did not understand what they were doing. So they would spend all of this time explaining their jobs to their lawyers and getting billed for it in the process. And they were extremely frustrated that they were essentially paying to teach their lawyer what they did. And it's a somewhat different space. We do a ton of contract review and contract negotiation, contract creation. And what you would see in a typical contract isn't necessarily the same hot issues that you would see in a blogging contract. So it's our experience with that has helped us considerably because it also takes us a bit less time to get through those contracts because we know exactly what we're looking for from being active in the space for so long. So fortunately, that has led to a lot of word of mouth referrals. And I have to tell you, in the summer, I was going through like a bit of a crisis like internally because I felt like this massive imposter syndrome that did I know enough? Was I just making it up as I went along? Was I meant to be in that position? And it kind of took me a little bit of work. We hired a business coach and she helped a lot with us kind of really saying where we were going to go. Because I truly thought that Business Ease was going to be the bigger side of what we were doing. And then that #Legal would be a piece, but not huge. And that's when we realized it was the opposite, that #Legal was really where we were going to drive our income. And it has for sure become that. And so it was a matter of kind of realigning our vision with kind of, for me, the idea that I could like being a lawyer again, because And I feel like that sounds silly, but
no, it doesn't.
It was one of those things where I had not been happy practicing before.
Yep.
So could I be happy? Could I create a practice that I really liked that didn't feel like a side hustle, basically? And I realized quickly I can do this. And not only can I do it, I like what I'm doing. And that was a big kind of soothing moment for me, that I had found a way to do what I liked and to build a business around it. And so now that we're able to do this, it's really become, I feel a little bit lighter about the fact that we're spending, that #legal really has become the primary thing, because it's not, I don't feel like I'm an imposter anymore. I have owned this, and I got over that pretty quickly, because that idea that I didn't have the experience to back it up was in my head. That wasn't
the
real.
imposter feelings, were that about the legal aspect, or was it about the business aspect of running the firm?
Both. I think that for me, it was, how can I put myself out there as a lawyer when I don't even like being a lawyer?
Yep.
It was that. It was, do I know enough to do this? And that's when I quickly realized I really do. And it was one of those things where I had a couple of clients come to me who were big companies and wanted to retain me for a couple of really specific things that I realized I do know this really well, because they have, what we often have is companies who may have a general counsel that they work with. They may even have someone in-house, but that person doesn't know what's needed for, their website policies or their privacy policy, or what their influencer contracts might need, or their FTC policy. So we, in a way, can help them complement their existing legal team with the knowledge that we have.
So are your clients, is this high volume work, or is this specialized, like, premium work? Like, I think a lot of people are wondering, what kind of money do bloggers make? Like,
it depends on the blogger. There are 7-figure bloggers out there. They are more of the unicorn, but they're out there.
Do you follow Michelle on Instagram from Make Sense of Sense?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Last month, she hit another $100,000 a month. And I was like, what are you doing with these affiliate links? Like, I don't get it.
There are a lot of people who have become very savvy about growing their businesses in this online space and really taking advantage of the various ways that are out there to earn money. We have folks who come to us, it may be contract review, and we work with a lot of bloggers, but we also work with a lot of networks. And so for those networks, they are the ones who are hiring the bloggers to execute the campaigns. We've also started working with a lot of online entrepreneurs who, same thing, they haven't been able to find a lawyer who really understands what they're doing. I mean, let's face it, for a lot of online entrepreneurs, you may be trying to explain to your friends, your family, and your spouse what you're doing, let alone trying to explain it to a more traditional lawyer. So I think that has been where a lot of our clients have come through. So a lot of it is high volume. For some bloggers, what they need is LLC formations, because they haven't been treating themselves as a business other than as a sole proprietor. So as they are building their teams and starting to outsource and delegate and hire people, they want to make sure that they're protected. And that's been a big piece for us as far as the bloggers go. And then for the online entrepreneurs, there's a lot of contract creation, because they may have a contract that they've kind of cobbled together using free resources. And they realize, okay, my business has hit this point. For a lot of people, it's like, I think when they hit that 6-figure mark where they're saying, okay, this is for real. This is something that I really need to take more seriously and invest something in building the right structure for it.
So you have businesses and you have #legal and you have a son. How does all this work together?
Some days are easier than others, quite frankly. And I also have 2 older stepkids. And so I'm doing carpool in the afternoon for them. Then I run out to pick up my toddler. The biggest thing for me is I am a morning person, and I do my best work early, not super early. Like I'm still, doing the mom side of things until about 7:30 to 8 o'clock. But what I have found is 8 to noon, that is my prime time when it comes to that heavy thinking work. So most of my legal work happens during that point. Then in the afternoon, I try to schedule it so that I have my lighter activities, which might be blogging or doing some of the more marketing side of things. And I try to really structure my schedule so that I am able to do that. Because what I found, and one of the things that was really hard for me at Fitfluential, I don't do my best thinking at night. I can do some of the content creation when it comes to if I'm blogging or, prepping social media for the week. But when it comes to legal work, that's not my best time. And it's funny because my partner is a night owl. So she loves to work at night, whereas I'm like, no, I want the early morning time slot to do that. So that for me is always the biggest challenge, is trying to make sure that I have those morning hours. So if I need to work on a weekend, which happens, then I'll talk to my husband, make sure that he can, particularly with the toddler, because he's the one who's not self-sufficient. My stepkids are 12 and 14. So they're kind of able to do their thing. And let's face it, on the weekends, they're sleeping. And so you remember those days when you could sleep until noon?
Sleep.
Oh, remember it? Yeah, good times. So, we just kind of have worked it that way. My husband's also a lawyer, so he for sure understands where we are. And this has been a crazy year because I am building the two businesses on my side. My husband also left his old firm to join as a partner with two folks. So he's really in kind of the same thing that I am. He joined an existing firm, so it's a little bit different, but we're both sort of in this, okay, we have to reframe our thinking from being kind of the associate, the order taker, to the business owner who's driving kind of the vision of the company.
So what are your thoughts on the future of social media and internet law and all that? Because I know that, at least for me, I'm very interested in fintech, and I know that there's not that many firms who are aware of what's happening in that space. And I think big law especially is just very traditional and they have institutional clients, but there's all this really exciting activity going on kind of in these smaller firms and smaller solo practices. Sure. And where do you see this headed? What do you see happening?
What I see happening is kind of a merging of the two. I think that for big law and some of the more traditional firms, I think that they may start to see one or two people, and I think it's probably going to be some of the younger lawyers that come in who are going to take an interest in this space and want to learn more about what is happening there. I think that the other piece of it is going to be they're going to have those institutional clients who are going to need help with these areas. So I think that it's also going to be about those firms, if they don't have someone internal, finding the right relationships with the smaller firms like mine, or with, some of the folks who deal solely with startups or solely with tech, where they can kind of come together and work on servicing those clients as a partnership. Because I think that this is not an area that's going to go away. The blogging world is going to change for sure. But when we talk about things like website terms of service, think about every time you hear of a company getting hacked.
Yep.
What's important there? What did their privacy policy say? Did there, what kind of liability are they opening themselves up for if their terms weren't out there and updated and right? So I think that, the more we hear about that, and particularly as those institutional clients want to make sure that they are protected, I think we're going to see either the bigger firms are going to start to maybe get a little more interest in the area, or what they're going to do is find those partners that they can refer that work out to make sure that those institutional clients are covered. Because I'm sorry, if there's a company out there that's paying, $40,000 or $50,000 for site terms to be done because they're using a really big law firm who's spending so much time on research, they probably can rework that budget and find another firm who can work with them to do that on a different type of budget. I can't say that I have ever spent sure, I would like to take their $40,000. I'm okay with that. But I think that if you find the firm who does really have that information, it doesn't necessarily have to be this monstrous bill to do every drop of research if they're already working in that space.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And I think that the really good firms and the really smart firms have always known that leveraging your resources and leveraging relationships is the best way to serve your client. So hopefully they'll continue to do that going forward.
Yeah, I think, and it's funny because I've had some younger lawyers who have come to me saying, I really want to get into a space like what you're doing. How did you get there? And I'm like, my path is not going to be anything like what you want to do. I'm like, trust me. I'm like, I don't think you deserve to have to spend the 6 years being miserable to get certain experiences. So I think that we're also going to see some of the folks who are probably coming out of law school, or maybe who are younger lawyers, who are more interested in having that virtual firm experience as opposed to doing the big law type of atmosphere.
Yeah. And I'm definitely encouraging of young lawyers, because I know a lot of people who have the loans and they go to firms and they are miserable. And I mean, I'm at a firm and I try to encourage people to try to be grateful for the opportunity to learn what they can while they're there, because there are great training opportunities and you're there already. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So you may as well take advantage. And if you know that you're not trying to make partner, there is a little bit of a weight that can be taken off if you know you're not trying to really stick to the path or the track.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people aren't that intentional or conscious of why they're there. They're just kind of complainy and like frustrated.
Yes, for sure. And I was like that when I was there. I was miserable. And what I didn't realize is I was getting the basis for the knowledge that I needed to do this. And I can look at that now with a very different attitude and a lot of gratitude. I didn't mean to rhyme, but that happened. I can look at it very differently. But when I was in it and kind of mired in my own misery, it's hard to see that. But really, I had somebody that I was talking to who has a very big interest in fashion law. And I mentioned to her, I was like, you are going to want to learn about trademarks and licensing. And, you can get that experience at a firm. And I think it's a great place to do it because you get these amazing mentors. It's then how you use that base to apply it to what you really want to do that can make a big difference in kind of carving out the path that you're looking for.
And it's so interesting because I feel like there's such for me, being on the other side of it, it seems like being at a firm and learning kind of the really traditional law of it, while kind of also building up her fashion knowledge by maybe starting her own blog or a podcast or something, an Instagram, to get herself in the space. And then within years, she could really put something together that would explode immediately,
Exactly. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. People want the overnight success.
And that's hard. It's tough to do that because it takes so much work.
It takes a lot of work to be an overnight success.
Exactly. And I think that that's kind of what people forget about is that, most people who they're looking up to as mentors, they've had their own journey and their path that they've gone through to get where they are. And while you may want to try to replicate that success, there's still those steps that you have to take to get the knowledge that's going to kind of propel you to where you need to go.
Yep. So that transitions really nicely into my next question, which is, what do you believe is the key to living a life that you love?
Being proactive. One thing that I know we've talked about is toward the end of my time in private practice, a friend recommended Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project, which I'm a big reader and I'm always like, what are my favorite books ever? And that has been ranked number 2 as my favorite book ever.
What's number 1?
Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, wow. That's a good choice.
Yeah. And I'm a big fiction reader. So
you are.
Even a nonfiction book on my top book list is, pretty amazing for that book. But that book changed. I can't even tell you how much that book changed my life because it was the sheer idea that I didn't have to be unhappy. I could be the person who makes myself happy, that I could play an active role in my own happiness blew my mind. And I don't know if you listen to the Happier podcast, that's one of my absolute favorites, but how Gretchen Rubin always says that one of the things that people always tell her that they did from the Happiness Project was make the bed every day. That was my first step too. I started making the bed every single day just to have that easy win in the morning. And that book truly changed everything because it took me out of that place where I was like, I'm stuck here. This is it. I'm stuck. It's over. This is going to be my life forever. I'm miserable. To saying, what is it that I can do? How can I proactively try to live a life that I love and have a career that plays into that as opposed to doesn't fill me up? I needed to find something that would make me feel truly happy as opposed to unhappy.
It makes me so happy to hear you say that because that was the same book that did it for me, that really changed my perspective.
Yes.
And I honestly don't know where I would be without it.
And it's a simple book. It's not necessarily the best written. It's not something that's necessarily going to resonate with everyone because Gretchen Rubin essentially sets out a project for herself where she's going to try a new thing every month. And it's what it did. It was the entire framework. So it wasn't each individual piece. It's not that I created my own happiness project or that I tried to implement her steps like a paint by numbers guide to happiness. It was the idea that I could find the keys for myself to do that. And the one lesson, she created her sort of happiness manifesto and like the tenets of what she believes can make her happy. And her number one was Be Gretchen. And I can't tell you how much embracing the idea of Be Danielle has changed my life. In my idealistic world, I'm like, I wish I did yoga. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. I don't like it. And kind of embracing the fact that I can be me. I can do the things that I love. I like to read cheesy romance novels. And I own it. I love the cheesier, if there's a bride on the cover, sold. Like that is the kind of books that I spend my evenings reading because they make me happy. They are light and fluffy. Like if they were food, they would be a pink cupcake with sprinkles. And I love reading that stuff because that's my relaxation. But if I wanted to binge watch The Real Housewives, I'm going to own it. That's not, I don't really watch very much TV at all, but because I'm busy reading romance novels. So like, it's one of those things where it kind of made me realize I don't have to be what I think in my head is this idealized associate lawyer who is trying to do, going to the construction lawyer banquets that just, oh my gosh, those were not my cup. They were not my cup of tea. Let me just say. But that I could kind of embrace other things. I loved to blog. How could I take that and be who I am and make it into something that makes me happy? So those teachings in the book really cemented this idea for me that I had a much more active role that I could take in creating a life that I love.
So are there any other tools or resources that you recommend besides that book?
That is probably the number one. For people who are in a business, I also really liked Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh of Zappos. I'm from Las Vegas and they are a Las Vegas institution here. They've done so much for the city. And so that one I thought was really good just in terms of how you can kind of structure your business to make sure your clients get a thrilling experience. Cause I know for me that word of mouth is like the main way we get more business. So making sure your clients are thrilled with you is a good way to do that. The other one that I think was pivotal for me was the Fire Starter Sessions by Danielle
Laporte.
She, and I will be the first person to say, I'm not super into woo. And I'm not like,
which is weird because Danielle Laporte is super woo. I would say she's pretty far over.
She's really into the woo section of like,
Yeah, I feel like Gabby Bernstein is the only one more woo that I love.
More woo, right. And when I read the Fire Starter Sessions, it was at a moment where I needed someone to just tell me, you got to believe in yourself and you can do it. She had a video that she put out, and I'll send you the link just in case you haven't seen it. That was her Fire Starter Sessions, like kind of her promo reel. It was like 13 things. I don't even remember what the title is. I watch it at least twice a week still, because the messages that she gives, balance is a myth. If you say you're going to do it, do it. And it just kind of gave me, I think it's a credo for making things happen is what it's called. And it so resonated with me because I was like, this is how I want to live my life. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And it was a good motivator. And I remember when we first started the business and I was in that sort of like imposter period that I went through like April of May, and a friend in a mastermind group said, I know you love Danielle Laporte's Fire Starter Session. She's like, so I'm going to tell you to go back and I need you to reread the chapter on fear. And I did. And it was the exact right words that I needed at that moment. And plus the other thing that I can say about the book is it's beautiful. It's utterly, that's when I'm a big e-reader. Like everything I do is on my...
Literally, I have that book on my e-reader and it's on my list for Christmas for this year.
It is the only book that I have displayed out. It sits on my little nightstand by my recliner where I read, because I know that there are times when I just need to pick it up, and read pieces of it because it gets me back in the right mind space. It really does help you believe in yourself. Now, as far as other resources, I really do love the Happier podcast. And first of all, one of the things I like the most about that podcast is I love the relationship between Gretchen Rubin and her sister.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I think her sister, like I always say, I've got imaginary best friends, and her sister is like one of my imaginary best friends. I absolutely love her. And so I really like that. And I also think that in terms of for lawyers, there's a lot of really great legal podcasts on marketing that I think are fantastic, because I think that a lot of times the online marketing space can seem a little bit foreign. So I really like Jim Hart's, Legal Marketing Made Easy, because he talks a lot more about doing more, I think, up-to-date online methods like creating lead magnets and things like that. So I think that there's a lot of really good tools that are out there. I'm a podcast junkie. And there's one that I just started that if you haven't heard of it, you'll like, is The Other F Word. Have you heard of that? Oh, good stuff.
Okay.
And the other F word that they're talking about is failure and the fear of failure. And I heard about it because my imaginary best friend, Elizabeth Kraft, was interviewed on it and she referenced it on the Happier podcast. And I was like, let me check this out. And it's so good because they talk a lot about resilience and, those types of things. And I was like, it was a really good one because like, if you need those kind of pushes, I think so many lawyers are type A and so many lawyers are afraid to fail that get into a space where they don't want to try anything new because of the fear and the potential shame or the embarrassment. But really, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? It doesn't work. Somebody says no. You can get through that,
Yeah. And I think also lawyers tend to filter for people who haven't had much failure in their life, because you kind of have to be at the top of a lot of different metrics in order to become a lawyer. So when you don't have as much exposure, you just haven't built up the calluses necessary.
Yes, that is a really great analogy for it. And I think that it is so hard the first time that you fail and the first time something just doesn't work. And then to be able to say, you know what? It didn't work. Yeah. Now we're in version 2. How many, think about all of the great inventions. Do you really think you're touching the first version? No.
Well, that's the thing. One of the things I try to tell myself is that if I haven't failed recently, it means I haven't tried anything hard recently.
Exactly. And you've always got to be willing to pivot. And that's, I think that there are certain business words out there that are so overused. Like nobody wants to hear synergy. Nobody wants to hear like a lot of things that are out there. But I love the idea of the pivot in a business. If something isn't working for you, pivot. Find what will.
Fantastic. So my very last question for you today is, what do you believe separates those lawyers who find happiness from those who don't?
For me, I think that the key is that self-awareness, like I mentioned, that you play a very active role in creating your own happiness. If you want to be happy, if there's something that you don't like, change it. Go for it. See what it is that you can do. A lot of times it's really hard. I have $90,000 in student loans left. I know what it is like for young lawyers who are drowning in debt. I'm there with you. I understand. But if you don't try, you're never going to know. And that one connection that you make, that one thing that you try could be the thing that makes the rest of your career look different. Like I said, I met my last business partner on Twitter. This was a series of tweets back and forth that changed my career in its entirety. So you never know unless you really kind of get out of your comfort zone and push yourself a little bit.
Such great advice. And I hope people will go out there and do that. Thank you so much, Danielle. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Can you share with the listeners, for example, where they can find you and see more about what you're doing?
Absolutely. If you're interested in seeing what we're doing at Business Ease, it's businessese.com, which a lot of people think is pronounced business S, but I swear it's Business Ease. And #legal is #legal.com. And I am all over the internet as either Danielle Liss or under my personal blog, which is Kitten A Go-Go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at okoma, OKEOMA, at thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!